Okay. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. This is our regular monthly meeting, October 22nd. And at this time, I'd like to call our meeting to order. And if everyone would join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. This time we'll say our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, board members, we're down to approving the agenda. We've had a chance to look that over. Is there any items that we need to add to our agenda for tonight? If not, I need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Wells and a second by Mr. Johar. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I hear none. We'll move down to recognitions. Do we have any recognitions tonight?
We do. Good evening.
Hey, Carla.
Board members. Yes, hi.
Hello.
So I'm going to attempt to share my screen again. Give me a second.
Okay.
All right. I am trusting that you all can see my screen now.
Yes.
Awesome. Again, I'm excited to have some recognitions for you this evening. We have learned so much about technology and how we can make this work virtually. So tonight I've got a couple of high school students I want to recognize. As you can see, they're on the screen now. We had two high school seniors who played in regional tournaments and both qualified for the state KHSAA golf tournament. That was in Bowling Green. So we want to say congratulations to Nolan Nossinger. Nolan, he is a senior at Muhlenberg County High School, and he is the son of Terry Nossinger and Christy Nossinger. This is Nolan's second time of going to state competition. We have James Soderling. As you all can see, I stalked Facebook page pictures and stole a few to share with you all tonight. James also is a senior, and we want to say congratulations to him for making it to the state tournament. And then I did continue stalking Facebook page and found this week that we had some FFA students who were able to compete in state virtually. I don't have any pictures of them actually competing in the category that they competed in, but I do have these three ladies here, Hannah Travis, Lexi Miller, and Chloe Rickard. They placed fourth in the state FFA floriculture contest. I love how they're all kind of matching in these pictures too. But just so that you know, Hannah is a junior at the high school, and she's the daughter of Danny and Vicki Travis of Belton. Lexi Miller is a senior at the high school, and she is the daughter of Alan and Stacy Miller of Bremen. And Chloe Rickard, she's a junior at the high school, and she is the daughter of Sean and Mindy Rickard of Bremen. So we're really proud of these ladies, and again, they were able to make it to state and place fourth. So that ends my recognition.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations to all.
Congratulations.
Yes.
That's great. Also, speaking of technology, I just want to throw in there again, Chad and all of his crew that helps. I have had so many teachers this week telling me to thank his group. And I know we have much needed them during board meetings and all as well during all the virtual meetings we've had. So once again, just a shout out to Chad Wells and all of his crew for helping everyone in our district be successful each day. Pick up the phone, call them, they're there is what I'm being told. So thank you all for doing that for everyone. I know that's especially valuable to our teachers and staff who are trying hard to do their virtual teaching and uploading of tests and documents and things like that. So just a big shout out to them and thank you all time and time again for everything you do for us all each day. So we'll move on down at this time to our treasurer's report. Mr. Blitzinger.
Thank you, Chairman Rager. Share it right now. Bringing you the financials as of September 30th, 2020. Our beginning, starting with revenues, our beginning balance was up about 2.2 million. However, our monthly receipts were down about 864,000 from last month and up 362,000 from the same period last year. Our federal was up 122,000, state was down 362,000, and taxes were down 885,000. However, other was up about 244,000, and food service is up about 19,000 for a total revenues, cash, and securities of 23.5 million. Expenditures and accounts payable, we had about 819,000 in accounts payable. And that is down approximately about 1.88 million compared to last year. Obviously, construction. The significant bills in August were 80,000 to Old National and 31,288 for AT&T Mobility, and that was a month and a half worth of the MiFi devices. Something to be noted on that won't be the same. It won't be that much moving forward. And if it comes to a point where we can cancel some devices, and I'm actually going to put a few on to suspend a few since they haven't been handed out fully. So that way we can kind of cut some costs there. Payroll, about 2.57 million. It's down 183,000 versus September of 2019. Some of that's sub costs, and some of that's just some of the extras that are usually in there for teachers and other staff. So the total expense is about 3.4 million in September. The breakdown of the accounts payable, fixed and mixed expense about 478,000, utilities were at 69,000, and variable expenses were at 271,000. The further breakdown of the 819,000, general fund was 424,000, fund 2 and the school activity funds are about a little over 90,000. Construction was 52,000, debt service is again 81,000, and food service and daycare almost 171,000. For a ledger balance of 20.1 million, bank balance was about 12.7 million with 353,000 outstanding checks for cash close of 12.3 million. Most of the obviously, we went down 697,000 from the previous month. Majority of that was general fund and fund 2. So extended financial picture, as through February of 2021, we expect to have about 23.7 million. You'll notice that in February is when I put about 4.4 million in there. So that's what we've been told to expect. So that's where that is. Have any questions?
Eric, I know you were researching about the collection rate for the taxes. Has any more been figured out on that yet, or the differences or discrepancies?
Really, our county, for some reason, I think a lot of it has to do with Texas Gas and AT&T. Our fluctuations are in large part based on my discussions with the Department of Revenue and KDE are the franchise tax. And the one thing that I'm still digging further on is why does it seem to fluctuate more in our county than others? That's where I'm trying to narrow it down there. But really, it is primarily in franchise tax. And from what I was told is that Texas Gas and AT&T contest it every year. So that's where the majority of it is.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Is there any questions
How
on
much,
the treasure?
how much is left on the Bremen Park to pay off?
I'd have to do a little research on that for you, Rajiv. I know
It should not be much, should it?
no, it's not much at all, really. I mean, I think, I believe it's probably the retainage that we have,
Yeah.
which, 10%, so
Probably
like, it could
100,000.
be it's less than 100,000.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions? If not, I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Bowers,
Second.
second by Ms. Wells. All in favor of approving the treasurer's report, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I hear none. We'll move down to payment of bills and salaries. Mr. Bletzinger?
Thank you again. So in October of 2020, we are bringing about $1,044,492 to you. The vast majority of that is in debt service, about 85% of that. Utilities expense about $51,000, and the large check there is to Old National Wealth Management for $855,000.
Thank you. And is there any questions on payments of bills and salaries? If not, I'll need a motion to approve the payment of bills and salaries.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Bard,
Second.
second by Mr. Johar. All in favor of approving payment of bills and salaries, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I hear none. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
We'll move down to public participation. Do we have any, Sherry?
No one signed in.
Okay, thank you. And so now we'll move on down to the administrative report and the superintendent report, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chairman Rager, board members. I've got 2 or 3 things. Julie's going to go over something a little bit later, then our principals will share a few things. But with Kathy here, Kathy Bethel from the Health Department has been gracious enough to join us. We talked a lot, and she's here with us tonight. Julie is going to kind of share her screen for me. And what I want to do tonight is go through some of the things that go into making the decisions we make on what mode we may be in. And I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm distracting myself. What mode we may be in, whether it be all virtual, AB, 4 days a week, which could be a possibility down the road, or 5 days a week. And there are a whole lot of factors that go into that. I'll try to make this relatively brief, but I did want to take some time to try to go through this. So I appreciate Julie doing some of the technology work for me. And Julie, if you would, let's go ahead and go into the first screen. All right, this, folks, there's a couple of reds out there, and I'm going to talk about the other one in a minute. But this is kind of the big one. This is kind of the umbrella that we have been operating under since late July, early August. I can't remember the exact date when we brought this out. But the green, which we likely won't be in for some time, the yellow, which we spent a lot of time in, and then a little bit of the red. And the red, there's a lot of factors that go into determining when we're red. And certainly the health department has a big say in that. Keep an eye on the cases, but there's a lot more to it that I want to get to here in a second. But I did want to highlight this is the original plan. This is Muhlenberg County specific. And we'll flip on to the next one, Julie. And here the yellow is highlighted where it says the decisions on this zone the district's operating under will be determined in collaboration with our local health department, which we certainly collaborate quite a bit, and then information from the Kentucky Department of Public Health. And there's actually a few other things that go in there. But again, all this funnels back to that original plan. So some of the factors to consider And I'm sure this is not an exhaustive list, but there's a lot here that I kind of want to go through. And again, this is not just whether we're virtual or not. This is whether we can be 5 days or not. And at the end of the day, there will be some judgment to it. There always is going to be, it seems like. But I want to go through each of these just a little bit. The first square there, first rectangle there, social distancing and mask requirements. That's been the thing that we've been hitting on from the earliest on. And you have to remember, as we talk social distancing, as we talk mask requirements, we often think classroom and how it affects the classroom, and absolutely that matters. But this also comes into play with transportation, comes into play with food service and other things as well. And early on, we were told the rule was, 6 feet or further apart. And then if you had, you have your mask on if you're inside of 6 feet. And at one point, they said, all right, if you're outside of 6 feet, you don't have to wear your mask. And we put that word out. We're going to come back on an AB schedule. If you want to opt in, here are the rules. And we put the word out based on sometime after that, about a week before we started back and actually got ready to go, or in the middle of September, they changed the rule that masks would be required regardless of whether you're inside of 6 feet or outside of 6 feet. I'm not commenting on whether that was okay or not okay, or wise or unwise. I'm not the health expert. I do know it rocked our world. And then I had to put out, again, we had to put out, all right, folks, here's the change. Now, what do you want to do? At that point, we had a lot of kids, parents with their kids, opt out. They didn't want their kids wearing a mask all day, and they didn't think they were going to have to. So these things that we had to think about buses. How many can sit how many in a seat on a bus? And that changed. That guidance changed back and forth. But the more kids we have in school, you can imagine if there's 1 to a seat, or at one point they have to be 6 foot apart, which means you may get 8 kids on a bus. If that's the case, as you can imagine, that is going to prevent us from being at 4 and 5 days. We can't handle that many kids with those requirements because we'd have to make 7 bus runs or whatever, and that's not feasible. So the social distancing and mask requirements, they play a huge part. We have that talk all the time. I do want to take a second to brag on our kids. The 2 weeks we were in, we had next to no issues with kids wearing their masks. And I think that's a great compliment to their parents, to the kids, and to our staff for modeling that and expecting that, and that went really well. So going forward, that's one less thing for us to worry about. Our folks have done a great job following that. So going on to the next one, cleaning and sanitization schedule, there's a lot of things that come into that. We've left Wednesday open between our 2 groups to do some deep cleaning. And that's one aspect of it, but there's also how much PPE do you have? And early on, we couldn't get enough in. Couldn't get enough cleaning supplies in, and we hand sanitizer, all these things we had to get enough of before we could get kids back in. We had a bit of an issue there for a while. I do want to thank our custodians here. They've been amazing. I want to thank our staff because as kids change classes, we are cleaning in between class changes. And our staff, they're jumping in and doing that because the custodian can't be everywhere. So all of these things, as you're thinking about how many can we have in, what can we do, this comes into play in such a big way. We have bottle filling stations now in each school. Thank you, Jimmy Fleming, and all your guys for getting that in. That helps with this. That's part of, for me, the cleaning, because now we're not having bottles to lug around and trying to provide bottles and everybody touching them. We've added that, which makes it more likely we can bring more kids in. What about the lunchroom and feeding? Well, we have to figure that out. And the more kids that are in a building, the harder that is. So we've started utilizing our gym some. And between each lunch, though, we have to allow time to do cleaning. So that factors into the schedule. So this all comes into play as well. Moving on to the third one there. This is huge. Our reported COVID numbers, cases and quarantines. Now, a lot of times these are things that sometimes the public does see. However, we get it broken down in several different forms. We know how many staff positives we have, how many staff quarantines we have. We know how many student cases and how many student quarantines. And then we also know, as everyone else does, our community numbers. Now, we do report that, but what we know is where those are coming from. Is it all in one school? Is it in one department? Which allows us to help make decisions better on, can we go? Can we continue to go? Or can we go with 4 or 5 days? What are our numbers looking like? I'm about to turn it over to Kathy for a minute, but I do want to say this because I've had a couple of questions about it. If we have a quarantine of somebody that's really crucial, which is like everybody, but we have some, let's just say that if we lose these people, we can't run. Maybe bus garage folks, maybe bus drivers. I don't have my CDL. I can't fill in. It's not like I have the ability to say, oh, we really need those folks. We're going to kind of not do that. That's not my decision. As Kathy will tell you, we don't have any conversation. She doesn't say, what do you think, Robbie? She gives us a list, and we follow that list without question. So I'm going to let Kathy jump in here if she will just a little bit, Kat, and anything you want to talk about this process, please do so.
The contact tracing is extremely important, and specifically for the school system. And that's why, you know, I think a lot of the public wants to point fingers here and there about where the cases are coming from. Because I know initially when school went back in session, you know, they were like, oh, well, the school opened, so now the cases are up. The public's not always privy to the information that we have, and because of HIPAA, I'm not allowed to give that information out. It could be that the cases are up because long-term care has an increase, one of them, or it could be because the prison has an increase. It could be people who are elderly and don't go to school at all. And those are things that the public's not always aware of. But the one thing that Julie and them do an astronomical job, because it is hard and it is time consuming, is we communicate. And for this to work, we have to do that daily. And Julie and them, if they hear something that we don't know, they contact us, we research it, and back and forth. So we are having those conversations as often as we need to have them about the number of cases, the number of quarantines. Is there something different we can do? I mean, by far and large, they're doing an excellent job at that. The number of cases we've had currently absolutely have nothing to do with the school system. The majority of the cases we have are elderly people right now. You know, and that's something that people are not really privy to. Something I'm not going to throw out there, and I'm not going to tag each section every time because it changes daily. The numbers change daily.
And Kathy, something we talked about yesterday, that it won't be reported that way. And I'll get into all that a little bit more later, but you're testing again in the prison now, correct?
Yes, and I can report that all of those tests were negative.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hoorah.
That's awesome.
That's one of those things that can make us turn into a red county when it absolutely has nothing to do with the school system. But the school will know it's not them.
Okay, well, thank you, Kathy. I'm going to come back to you again a couple more times. I want to move on to the next one, the continuous conversations. This is, it's not like you're taking a vote. Not everybody has all the information we do, but it certainly matters to talk to people that are in different positions and get their thoughts on how is it going, how can we improve, what are you actually seeing? And so we meet a lot. There are so many meetings, so many conversations happening on the school level, the district level. I talk a lot with other superintendents daily, group text absolutely daily. We met again today. We meet via Zoom meeting, about 8 or 10 of us each week. So we share, you know, and maybe if a district's been going 5 days, how'd that work for you? And what would you have done differently? Or if someone is not taking Wednesday off, maybe they're doing a different A/B schedule. We talk a lot. We talked about sports all the time. So they have the same issues we do. Maybe not exactly the same with the numbers and all this, but they're still facing similar issues. So those continuous conversations are absolutely essential. We're not sitting up here on a hill and all of a sudden just make some decision. We try to get input. We've done surveys. We've talked to them. We meet all the time. I think that's really important to know that. The board and community input. it's important for folks to know that, you know, the board members and I, we text or talk pretty much daily. And it's not going to be where they have to vote now. They don't have to vote every time if we go into AB or we're out, because those things can happen really quickly. It's very possible that some Sunday afternoon we get enough numbers in, or we have a department that ends up getting quarantined, that we've got to close. And so there's going to have to be some fluidity and some flexibility to that. So even though they may not be having a vote now, if we come back to 5 days, absolutely, we will come in, because that's a huge change. But I need you folks to know that we are talking all the time. I'm hearing from them as they hear from the community and they hear from the staff. Community input is obviously important. We want our folks on board. We want them believing in us and trusting in us that we're trying to do the right thing. Actually, we're the largest employer in the district, so we're a large part of the community. When you include our families and our friends and all that, we're talking to folks all the time. So there is a lot of input there as well, and that may be hard to quantify, but we are definitely listening, and we've learned some things. There's some things we have done differently, but we also learn from those folks out there that, hey, maybe that's something we haven't thought of. We know, like childcare, huge issue for our folks, huge issue for our parents. We have surveyed them. We'll probably be doing another one before long. I don't know exactly how to fix that, because we're all until we get 5 days. And right now that's difficult to do. So let's move to the next one, ability to continue daily operations. All these kind of overlap. So what happens here is maybe our numbers are really low. Maybe we only have 2 positives or 1 positive and 10 or 15 or 20 quarantines from that. Maybe that's all we have in the entire district. But if that's in the wrong spot, we may have to close. We could close 1 school. We could close 1 grade level. That's happened before. Now, some of this is similar to snow days, with the may have to cancel last second. That could happen, but the difference is with snow days, it was all or nothing. If it was snowing in Bremen and 40 degrees in Dunmore, we still had to close if there were slick roads anywhere. We do have the ability now to close only sections of things if we deem that necessary, and that is in conjunction with Kathy Bethel and the health department. We're going to get their input. Is this the wise thing to do? Can we continue to bring in kids elsewhere in a safe manner? So some places like food service, transportation, enough teachers go down. Obviously, we would have to close, but a lot of times, again, I want to keep bringing up food service, transportation, you know, the technology, the maintenance needs, all those things matter too. All of those things could close us, and it may be very low numbers, not just kids and not just teachers. All those other things play into as well. The next one, hospital capacity. This is not anything that is going to close us or make sure we're open, but it is another indicator that we do check on. That's something the state has asked us to do, is say, hey, look at your hospital capacity. Spoke to Ed Heath just Monday or Tuesday. As of right now, we're good. We're not maxed out. 1 is 1 too many. We understand that. But basically what we're checking here is if we, you know, what's our community look like as far as in our hospital. And Ed also mentioned that they're always checking with Owensboro, the hospital in Owensboro, if they need to move them there. How many negative pressure rooms do they have? How much equipment do they have? And Ed said as of Monday, you know, they are in good shape. They can handle anything coming their way, at least in the near future. The next one is another huge one. Bring Kathy in on it just a second. The health department input. I keep saying that. Hard to say that enough. I don't pretend to be a health expert. My job is to try to take all these things and make a good decision. But this one is absolutely huge. Contact tracing is so big. That's such a massive job to try to reach everyone. If you have 1 positive, our job then is to have all of the seating charts, and that's on the bus, that's at lunch, that's in each class. All of this had to be done before we ever started bringing kids in. And so when kids come in, let's just say Johnny, little Johnny, we always go to him. Let's just say he tested positive. Well, immediately, and Kathy can say this better than me in just a second, but I'll make the point. they're going to want to know, all right, I need to know where the kid's been all day, and I need to know who's been around him and how close and for how long. And we have to provide that. And that may be on a Sunday. So the teacher can't just call the teacher there. So we've had to get that into the computer, get that all logged in. The bus charts all have to be ready. What did you do at lunch? All that has to be turned in a very controlled manner. So everything we do, we can't just, all right, kid, you move here, you move here. Has to be very thoughtful, very planned out. Obviously, the more kids we have in school, which is ultimately what we want to do, we want to bring them all in, the more problems you're going to have anytime you have to do some contact tracing. So probably said more than I need to, Kathy, but I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about this massive job you guys have.
The contact tracing can be a challenge. I know that there are several health departments that don't work whenever the cases come straight in, especially on the weekend, or they have someone else doing, but we work all cases. We tend to try not to call anybody after 9 o'clock at night. We wait and call them in the morning if it's after 9, because people do go to bed. But it is a massive undertaking, because the sooner that you can get the contact tracing done and the interview done, the sooner you can get those people quarantined. And that's so essential to the spread of COVID-19, because, you know, people are asymptomatic and they're out walking around and they're out doing things. And so the sooner that we get them quarantined, the better off we are, because it stops the spread. And that's why it's such a huge undertaking. And that's like why we try to do it so quickly. And that's why we've asked Julie and them to help us try to expedite that, because the sooner we get them out of the environment, the better off we are. And, you know, no one wants to have it. So if we can get rid of it by slowing the spread, that's our goal. And so that's why we work as long hours as we work and as hard as we work, is to make sure that we slow that spread.
And there's a lot of expected from our folks. And this is, like I said, what I need folks to understand on the teachers and administrators part, and even our transportation, it's not easy just to say, all right, let's just move kids around, make this right or whatever, like we could in the past. We could make adjustments really easily and quickly. Now we really can't do that. We have to make sure that everything is in order before we do that. So when Kathy, if and when she comes calling, we can provide in a very timely manner what she needs. Now, one thing I haven't said, and I need to, what we had to do early on is get plenty of thermometers and be able to test each person before they come into a building, before they go on down that hallway, even staff members, even visitors. The temperatures are checked, and they fill out a questionnaire, or they answer several questions. So we're trying to have a very controlled environment in our schools, and I think we do. I think that's one thing we do as well as probably any business, any place in the county. Even though we have a lot of folks, a lot of kids and all that may be coming in, we try to be very controlled, very purposeful, very thoughtful about how we go about our business. And the next one here, enrollment numbers. Now, why is that there? That changes what we can do. All of this, as our numbers go up, then some of these other things come into play. As our numbers go up, social distancing becomes trickier. As our numbers go up, contact tracing may go up. Our cases in quarantine, certainly one case, if you have higher numbers, you're more likely to have more quarantines. So that is something that, again, we'd love to be 5 days. That's where I want to be right now. I want to have that option, but with some other factors going on, we've elected not to do that. Now, I will say, starting Monday, we have over 500 more students than before fall break, spread out over all the schools, have re-enrolled to come in person. And really, we can still handle that. We're still good. We had some really low numbers in some cases before fall break. So we're kind of glad to see some kids. In some cases, it'll be the first time we've seen that child since early March. So the enrollment numbers do matter, though. As you go up, you have to start considering all of these other things. Now, the next one, I'm going to get into a little bit of math here. Former math teacher, I'll see if I can still do this. But there's two things that I've heard a lot of confusion about, and I'll bet money so is Kathy. The state positivity rate and the daily incidence rate. Now, the positivity rate, and this is from today. The way this is figured, and Kathy, as soon as I'm wrong, you just jump in. But the way this is figured on the positivity rate It is a percentage kind of thing. You take all the tests that were given, and this is based on a 7-day rolling average. They don't just take one day. It could vary too much. To try to balance it out, they take the last 7 days and they average those days out. And then they keep knocking off the last day and adding another one, rolling on. But this is all of the tests given, and out of all of the tests given, what percentage of those are positive? So this also takes into consideration negative tests. And Kathy has mentioned before that a lot of times I think folks, that maybe some of these labs don't necessarily turn in the negative test results in a timely manner, which would affect this. Now, another reason I bring this up, this is not Muhlenberg. This is the state. This is from the COVID KY site. This is a state thing, but they have said on more than one occasion that once this gets to about 6, they may step in, and the state may start mandating or recommending some other things. And unfortunately, Kathy, I'll let you comment on this. This is the highest number I've seen in a minute statewide.
It is the highest one we've had in a while. Back in July, we were close to this, but this is the largest since July.
Kathy, did I say that right? Explain that right on the
You
positive?
did. You explained it perfect.
Okay.
When we initially started out, COVID, there's a lot of reportable diseases that come to the health department and to the state. And when COVID initially started out, not all of the labs reported the negative results. And for us to be able to calculate a positivity rate for state, it was essential that we had all the negatives. So that's why they're doing a 7-day rolling average, because they're trying to get all the labs on board with reporting all the negative results. And we are getting a whole lot more negative results than we did in the past.
Like, for example, and I'll use this example again in a second, but all of those tests at the prison, and they all came back negative, that would take this number down just a little bit, because
Yes.
you're getting no positives but a bunch of negatives. But I want to jump to the next one now, the daily incidence rate, which has been very confusing for a lot of folks. This is also today's map. Good news is we have dropped out of the red, we're into the orange, and we've been dropping for quite some time. About 4 or 5 days, we've been kind of steadily declining with some better numbers, and that's a positive. But this, when we were red here, this is a red that a lot of people equated with the original red. And they're like, okay, you know, on your original plan, you said if you're red, you're down. Well, I'm going to talk a little more about this in just a second, but this daily incidence rate is totally different from the positivity rate, the daily incidence. So I'm going to go to the next one, if you would, Julie. I think we're 22.4 there today. So let's do some math. They've chosen, and I really look at what's it take to get us in the red. So they have chosen that 25 out of every 100,000 puts you in the red. And now, why do they say out of 100,000? Why did they not just say, let's just report how many cases each county has? Well, that really wouldn't be fair to McLean County or Jefferson County. If McLean County has 10 cases, that's probably significant. If Jefferson County has 10 cases, they're in great shape. So what they decided to do, let's look at for every 100,000. So what that means is, before I get into this math, if our district had exactly 100,000, if we averaged 25 a day, we would have a rate of 25, a daily incidence rate of 25, and we would be in the red. But we don't have that many, so we've got to do some math. So what you do is you take everyone in the state starts the same way. They take the 25 and they divide it by 100,000. Everyone in the state, that's exactly the same. So you take that number, and then let's get county specific. Now we're going to multiply by our population. Now, Kathy, I think this is correct. This is what we're using as far as the Census Bureau, the best we could do. We use 30,622, which is what we think we have. Like I said, I'll go to McLean. They may have 9,000. They would plug 9,000 in there. Jefferson, a whole lot bigger number. So you multiply it by your population, and then you get your daily. And then you multiply it by 7 so you have your 7-day total. Now, why is 7-day total important? They do a 7-day rolling average. So it's not just what one day is. They try to say, all right, maybe it's one crazy day or a 0 one day that really should have been 5 and they're reported a little late or whatever. So they try to balance it out over a longer period of time to make it more accurate. The 7-day average does that. So that's why you multiply it by 7, and that is our number. That's our actual number right there. If we have more than 53 cases for the week, this is positive cases, we're in the red. If we have, and if you want to divide it out by today, just go ahead and divide it back by 7. And we would really love to be 0, obviously. But anything under 7.6, anything under 7 or less, is going to keep us out of the red over time. Now, for example, if you want to say, all right, what would it take to get in the yellow? That's where we want to be, Kathy, right? We want to be in the yellow.
We would love to be in the yellow.
Is the daily incidence rate of 10 or less is what they've decided. Now, these numbers, I assume, are somewhat arbitrary. They've chosen these numbers, but anything between 10 and 25 is orange, where we are now. To get into the yellow, you need to be under 10, as I understand it. You would simply put the 10 where the 25 is, and you would do the exact same work. And what that comes out to for us to get into the yellow, if my math is correct, we need to have 21 cases or less per week, or 3 or less per day. So those things are things that I want to know. I want to be able to try to keep up with each and every day. And I go on to the next screen because it illustrates it really well. Thank you, Julie. Okay, let's assume, let's just look at that block. And I don't know if these numbers are accurate. I don't know if those are our actual numbers. They may be. But let's go through, and like that first day, 10, and the next day, 5 were reported, 15 the next day, 13 the next day, 9, 8, and 4. You add them up and you get 64, and you're like, okay, we already know we're going to be over, because anything over 53 is not where we want it to be. But if you want to figure out what is 64, what percentage is that exact, not percentage, I got to be careful, what daily incidence rate is that? And so what you do up there in the box on the right, upper right hand corner, you just take that 64 and divide it by 7. We're just going to work backwards. We're just, every time we multiply, we're going to divide, and divide, we're going to multiply. So you take that 64, you divide it by 7, and you get a daily right now, 9.14. And you divide that by our population. We already knew that's 30,622. And then you're going to multiply it because they want to know out of 100,000. So you just do the backwards math, and you end up with 29.85, which is where we were. We were 29.9 for a couple of days. So, all right, how do we figure that the next day? Well, as we roll down to 1019, and that box essentially would shift down 1, the 10 comes off the total, and a 12 now comes on. Well, that's not the way we want to go. That would mean then for the next rolling average, we now have 66 total. And so that's going to be a bigger number, and our numbers are going to go up. The bigger a district you are, the less likely these numbers are going to move dramatically. The smaller district you are, one family could almost put you in the red. McLean County can't have more than 3 or more a day. If they average more than 3 a day, they're going into the red. That's why you see their numbers. If they have a day of 10, they're going to be in the red, and it's going to make their numbers look really bad, even though it may not be as many numbers as Muhlenberg. But since they do per 100,000 and they're smaller, that's the way it's going to work out. So what I'm able to do is on my map from Kathy and Carolyn, each day I write down what they report. And so I'm trying to see, are we coming down? Are we going up? How can I use this to predict where we're going? Last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday, we had 18. Kathy, that was probably the highest number we'd had in a long time. So yes. That 18 stayed on the total for 7 days. I think that will come off probably tomorrow. Usually there's a little bit of lag time to this. I think maybe a day lag time. So I think tomorrow we're likely to go down even further. But I can simply match up, are we going down from the previous Saturday, the previous Sunday, the previous Monday, or are we going up? So remember, again, this is not a percentage. This is strictly how many positive cases out of 100,000 in your county, out of every 100,000, how many positive cases are you having per day? And they don't just pick one day, they do it over 7. So let's kind of compare for a second positivity rate and the daily incidence rate. And if I'm in the weeds or I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. I'm trying to kind of work through this as best I can. Let's take when UK tested their whole campus. They tested 23,000 kids. Let's assume that all those kids, that all that was going to be reported in Fayette County. If you only had 5 kids test positive out of 23,000, your daily incidence rate is going up because that's 5 more than you would have had you not tested them. However, your positivity rate is going to drop because you only had 5 positives and 22,995 negatives. So it's very possible that one goes up and the other goes down. With our prison, for example, testing, if they tested all the prisoners, maybe 300, and you had 1 positive, our daily incidence rate would go up because it counts on our total. But our positivity rate would go way down because 299 out of 300 were negative. So it's a lot of math, but I want folks to see how this works. It's not some magical number that we just kind of dream up. This is how it actually works, and this is one of the factors that we use. And if you would go to the next slide now, so this is a little confusing, and this is the one. All right, it says red, and the state has said, hey, we recommend you suspend all your activities when you get to red. Kathy and I have talked about this pretty extensively. We're choosing to look at this as one of the factors. It's important, but it's one of the factors because a 25 for one county and a 25 for another county can be totally different. We may be at 26 or 27. As Kathy said, we could be in school right now. I'm confident if we'd gone this week, we would have been okay. And we were in the red, but it wasn't our folks. I know there's some community spread. I understand how that works, but the fact is it's different if they're in your school or if the cases are not in your school. It absolutely is different. We're a very controlled environment once we get them there. So it's very possible that we're in the red and we go. Now that'll be in conjunction with all of those other factors that'll absolutely be talking to Kathy, that'll be looking at what's happened over the last week, which direction are we headed in, and that will absolutely be, are these our folks? Is it our kids? Is it our staff? And I'm going to tell you, I need to say this as well. It can very well be the case where we're in orange or we're in yellow on this chart and we're out of school. I talked to a superintendent of Grayson County today, and a week or so ago, they were in yellow and very close to having to close. And because even though they had very few cases, they were Muhlenberg, they were his staff and his kids. So Ohio County was up around 30, talked to him today, but they had 0 cases. 0 people quarantined, 0 cases. So it's not as simple as, hey, you're red, you're down, or you're orange, you're going, or you're yellow, you're going. That could very well be where we're yellow and out or red and in, because all those other factors have to come into play. And it's very tough to make a quick decision on that too. Hey, it's red at 4:30, let's close school for how many days? Now McLean just closed and they were absolutely in the red, way up in the red, but it was in their school. And there were a lot of quarantines in the school, some staff in the school. And if we're in that position, yes, we're going to have to close. And it may be where we close one school again. So this chart is important, and I don't want to pretend that it's not, but it's one of the things that we look at, not the only thing. All of this factors into, are we in the red on that initial chart I showed you? And this is a piece of that. Kathy, would you care to elaborate or jump in on anything I said there?
I just wish that, everybody wants to look at it as it's a concrete decision, and there are a lot of extrapolating factors. And I think that's why it's good that we all communicate well with each other, because it's not concrete. It's not black and white. There is a gray area, just like you said. And so I think that's why communicating with each other is the most essential thing that we can do to ensure that all the kids stay safe and all the staff stay safe and the whole community stays safe.
Because at the end of the day, guys, we know we have to work, and I'll talk about balance in a second, but we have to work towards trying to get these kids in. This may last a year. It may last longer. So the whole balancing, again, I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'll talk about that in a second, but you know, all of these things come into play. It's like snow. Sometimes, you know, you're making a judgment call. Sometimes you're making a judgment call. I just wanted folks to understand that there's a lot of thought that goes into it, a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of communication that goes into it. In the last slide here, as we come back to it, I asked Julie to put on wild cards, and she chose a whammy. And since I don't have the ability to do my own PowerPoint, I have to go with it. So let's talk about what the whammy means. Of all the things I've talked about, there's still going to be things come up that are still unknown. They're still on, that we don't know where we're going with, that are just going to come out of the blue. Flu season, strep season, they worry me greatly. That, you know, with possibly their symptoms mimicking COVID, you know, what's that going to look like? And I would love to get back to 5 days. I said, even if our numbers drop, but you worry about flu and COVID, when that comes in, how is that going to impact us? And if it mimics the symptoms and you don't know if it's COVID or not, you're going to treat it as COVID and you're going to shut down and you're going to quarantine. So those things are worrisome. And now a positive in this, and I'll let Kathy talk about it because I'm really appreciative of what they've done. They have some quick tests coming, and where we can test someone within and get a result inside of 15 minutes, which is incredibly awesome. Because now I can know, all right, this is not COVID. And instead of waiting 2 or 3 days for a result, we can get an immediate result. Kathy, where are we with those tests?
Well, we have the antigen tests that are here that staff are being trained on. The state recommends that the antigen tests be used only on symptomatic people. And largely that's due to a study that was done in Nevada, where asymptomatic people, if it's not capturing those symptoms within that 7-day period, asymptomatic people can have a false positive or a false negative. So they don't really recommend those for asymptomatic. So anybody that's symptomatic, we can use the antigen test on and we can get the results in 15 minutes. We also have an Abbott ID Now coming with tests that's a PCR test that's 15 minutes or less. Typically what we do is if someone's symptomatic, we do an antigen test on them. If they're negative, then we follow it with a PCR. So we'll also have that capability to do that with the Abbott ID Now, as long as we have cartridges for it. And, you know, that one's in high demand. It's being used all over the world. So, you know, we have to go with what allotment we can get for that one. But we've also been doing PCR tests, and our PCR tests are coming back within at the most a 48-hour window. Now, if anyone else starts using the state lab more than us, then that may go to 72 hours. But currently, we're able to get results back. Like all the ones we did yesterday, we got them all back today, which is like a 24-hour turnaround. So most of the time, it's somewhere between a 24 and a 48-hour turnaround. It could be 72 hours depending on the demand and the number of tests they have to run.
And Kathy, I want to say this and make sure I say this to parents clearly too, but it's possible that we are able to offer some testing at the school level, correct, at some point?
Yes.
And I do want to say this, though, before I forget it, Kathy, I want to make sure for parents.
If the need arises, currently we're going out into the public and doing the mobile testing in the northern, the southern, the eastern, and the western region, because transportation is a huge issue for people here. So that's what we're doing now. But, you know, if there's an area that requests it and we can accommodate it, that's exactly what we're going to do. So it's not to say that we couldn't come and set up at the school on one of those alternate days and do testing for people who want to do it. But we do have 8 testing sites. We do Beachmont, Dunmore, Graham, Midland, Bremen. And so we do a lot of different tests, Nelson Creek. But we have accommodated people as they needed it. So if there's a section or an area that has an outbreak that we can help accommodate, we will.
And I want to say this to parents, be very clear. We are not going to capture your kid, hold your kid down, and give them a test without your permission. So
no, it has to have parental consent.
Right. I want that to be clear. That's never going to happen, but that is something that could happen, and we're excited about that. That's one of those wild cards in a very positive sense. If we're able to get those quick tests, that's absolutely going to help. Another wild card could be if we get to the 6 or higher on the positivity rate, we may get a state mandate that comes down through our health department and say, hey, you've got to do this or you've got to do that. So that could happen. We don't know when those are coming, but it could. And another wild card, I want to talk about this a little, is, what about Thanksgiving? Now, we don't have to make that decision now, but that worries me a little bit, and as I'm sure it does Kathy. We chose to be down 2 weeks after fall break. Not all districts did that. We were a little concerned about bringing it back from other places. Well, Thanksgiving is going to offer another potential issue there, and so we'll have to try to, closer to time, make a call on that. And one of my friendly folks out there to try to keep me between the lines, need to make sure I say clearly when I talk about us closing, I'm talking about us going all virtual, not closing. I need to say that right. But there are a lot of other wild cards that we may not be anticipating, but those are just a few of them. So those are some of the factors to consider. There are other ones, I'm sure, but as you can see, it's not a simple, there's just no one simple color or one simple thing that you can look at and make a wise decision. If we knew this would be over in 3 weeks, then we would say, all right, let's don't try to fight through this. Let's don't worry about all this. Let's just shut down and be done with it. When we know that this is likely to last months, maybe even a year, I think it's our job to try to figure out how to make this work in the safest way possible. It's not just instructionally with our kids. That's a big, big, big deal. It's mentally, emotionally, all those things, the mental health of our kids. This is real. It's affecting them not being out, being with us. Some kids live in a lot of poverty situations, and the parents are doing the very best they can, but we can help with that if we can get those kids to school. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. And again, all these things come into play as we consider that. If you go to my final thoughts, I know some of you can probably ready to cheer on that. The final thoughts here, yeah, we do plan on being back AB on Monday. And I am glad we're in orange. But even before that, we were looking like we could be back on Monday. Having said that, it could change on Sunday if we get a call and, hey, all these folks are now quarantined. The ultimate goal, I've said it over and over, is 4 or 5 days a week. I hear you, parents. I hear you, teachers. You need your kids in. We have to figure out how to do this in the safest possible way. So we've chosen to stay AB to keep some of those things in order, the social distancing and all that. 4 or 5 days, we're going to lose some of that, but we know we gain things there. So we're keeping an eye on that. I would love to be able to say to our parents and to our staff who want some certainty, I'd love to say something like this. All right, guys, we're going to be down until Thanksgiving. We're staying AB. After Thanksgiving, we're going 4 days a week until Christmas. And then after Christmas, we're going to come back on a 5-day-a-week schedule. It would be foolish to say that. I can't know that now. That's my goal. But it's very unlikely that will work with flu season coming in and all those other things. So as much as you crave certainty, COVID has taken that away. And all I can do is tell you where we are, what do we plan to do in the immediate future. That's kind of where we have to be. The next point there's so many variables that go into this, and we're trying to predict unknowns. We're trying to predict the future on things that are so hard to do. But we're trying to use all those things to help us make the most accurate prediction we can. These next two, this is it, guys. Flexibility, the ability to change on a dime, the ability to be up and down, the ability to, or teachers who are trying to teach the kids at home and in person, and that is so difficult to be great at both of those, especially if you want to maintain any kind of life at home. For our bus drivers to be able to do what they're asked to do with feeding our food service folks, the flexibility is so important. And guys, I almost see this as like a seesaw, where on one side is safety and the other side is getting our kids into school, all of our kids in, because safety drives everything. It has to, but we have to recognize the importance, and I know we do, of seeing our kids face to face. They need that. We need that. So the more things that we can put in place, the social distancing, the mask wearing, all the PPE and all the sanitization stuff, all the cleaning, the more we can do of that, the more safely we can bring more kids in. And obviously we're kind of at the mercy of some of the numbers in our community. Sometimes we haven't done a thing wrong, but it happens. And so we have to back off, but we have to keep pushing towards getting the most kids in we can, but that means doing all those things right. And so balance is the key. That's what keeps me up at night. I worry about the kids who aren't in and need to be in and need us. And I worry about the safety of our staff and our kids as we try to accomplish that. So the balance is such a huge deal in there. And I can't say enough that even though positive cases are absolutely the most serious, the quarantines are what's going to shut us down often. It would not take many in our transportation department, for instance, to potentially shut us down with maybe one positive, but enough quarantines to get us. And, you know, at one point we had over 50 kids quarantined. Now, one of them was a sports team and maybe from one positive. So that's something we have to keep an eye on. And that's why as we try to decide how can we minimize how can we keep our mask on all the time? That's so important, because Kathy and them are going to ask that. They're going to ask, how close were you? Did you stay 6 feet or further away? And they're going to ask how long you were together. So the more we can try to be smart about how we go about our business, the less likely we are to catch it from one another, and the less likely we are to be quarantined by Kathy and her gang. Is that true? Is that correct? Yeah.
That is absolutely correct.
So there's not, I do want to mention one more time, parents, be ready for this. It could happen. We could close only one school on less than 24 hours notice. We could close only one grade level. We could easily go from in-person to all virtual overnight like a snow day. We won't change from 2 days AB to 5 days overnight. We will not do that. If we change from AB to 5 days a week, our board will be involved. We'll bring them in. We'll talk about it. We'll vote on it. You'll have a chance, if we do that, to opt in or opt out. Because if we go at some point, maybe March, but if we go from AB to 4 or 5 days a week, I can't know everyone's circumstance. Some folks will say, all right, I'm out. That's too many kids. And some folks will say, okay, that's what we need. Now we're in. So I want parents to understand, we won't do that to you overnight. Will we go from AB to all virtual? Yeah, we probably have to do that at some point. That's like a snow day. But if we go the other way, you'll have a chance to make a new choice if that's what you want to do. So that's a lot of stuff. Kathy, I don't know if you want to add anything. Appreciate you so much being with us and letting me do most of the talking. Probably been a whole lot better if you taken us through all that. But so any questions, any discussion, anything for Kathy? That's kind of what I have.
I think you did an excellent job.
Do I have a second on that?
I have taught you well.
Well, I got to do a math lesson. First time I've done that in a while. So that made sense to me, but maybe no one else. I don't know.
I got a headache pill for you.
Raji. Fair enough.
Hey, we know you still have it in you in case you ever decide that you don't want to be superintendent anymore and you want to go back to the classroom. We know you can do it.
Well, that's a lot of numbers and maybe a little overwhelming, but if folks can go back, because we'll put this on Facebook tomorrow. This presentation, folks can slow it down. If they really want to look at it, they can play with numbers. I'll send it out to the staff tomorrow as well. So if people are interested in that, they can go back and work through it. If they're not, they can be like, you know what, I'm just going to wait till the end of the day. Now, I will say one thing I wish I could control that I can't is the community buy-in, because the better folks do at Walmart, the better folks do at our sporting events. And let me add the sporting events really quickly. The sporting events on the red, we do use that second chart, that incidence rate, and here's why. We haven't been playing teams if they're in the red. We have kind of avoided that. But while that is different, that's one common thing that we have with other districts. So we can make a quick check. And if Ohio County's red and we're red, then we haven't played. I can't know all those other things about Ohio County. I can't know, nor can Jerry Hancock know, okay, they have this many quarantines, this many kids. They have this with their enrollment. They have this with social distance. I can't know that. So we have decided, hey, if they're in the red, we haven't played them, with the exception of if it's a tournament. And again, it's a judgment call, which means you can be questioned. If it's a tournament, we try to have afforded the kids the opportunity to play in a district or regional tournament, even if the other team is red, because we go the extra mile then and we call. I talked to McLean County Superintendent earlier this week. They were in the red, and he's like, no, Robbie, we're canceling. It's in our school, and so we're not going to do that. So we do have those extra conversations for tournaments, but otherwise we've simply used that quick reference guide, and we simply have chosen not to play districts in the red. Again, that's a commonality. Now, the better our community buys in, Kathy, I think you'll agree with this, the better it is for us. And I don't think there's likely an institution, a business, or anywhere that is tighter than we are with all the things that we do. We control our environment really well. Now, there are folks that are asymptomatic. They can't deny that. I can't talk around that. That is the case. That's always going to be a concern.
But those are everywhere.
That's for
Those are
everywhere.
everywhere.
That's for church or a bank or Walmart or Logan.
Right.
They all have the same thing there. So that is true. And truly, when we're in the red on that second map, that daily incidence rate, that's community wide. So, banks aren't closing then unless they have to. Walmart's not closing unless they have to. And we're in the same boat. Now, we have the most precious commodity there is, our kids. So we try to go the extra mile to do all of those things. But the fact is, we are trying, my goal is to figure out how to work through this, given all the things that we have. And having said all that, I have very little doubt that there's going to be times we're going to have to go all virtual. I have very little doubt that will almost certainly happen. But, hopefully we can minimize that with the things we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. If no more questions, I am going to go to the next one. Julie needs to jump in here for a sec. Kathy, you can check out. Thank you so much for being here. And Julie's going to check in. She needs to talk to you guys about a position.
Thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathy. Yeah, this will take just a second. I just want to let you all know about a new initiative that we need to discuss and just kind of get the word out there so you'll be aware whenever you start seeing and hearing things about this. But House Bill 352 allocated $7.4 million to school districts for this school year, and that equates to $43,095 for our school district to spend toward mental health services. And we've been talking about that, thinking about the best way we can use those funds, and they're very restricted in a sense that it has to go toward mental health services and looking toward a guidance counselor, a school social worker, a school psychologist type person who can help. And the best way that we think we can use that money is through a contracted service due to the amount of money that we're talking about. And the only way that we really have a way to get that word out is through our talent ed system. So we want to use the talent ed system to post a position, but I want to make sure you all understand that it's not a board paid position. It's a grant, and it won't, become a new position for us. We just want to use talent ed as the tool to get the word out and to capture some interested applicants. So if you have any questions about that, I'll be glad to clarify in an email. And then once we find someone who we think would be a good fit, then we'll make sure we have a contract and bring that back to you for approval before we make any next steps.
Thank you, Julie. And I had principals on board to go next and kind of share, but I've sent you their numbers. And so I'm not gonna bring all those on because I'm already kind of gone long. So principals, you are off the hook, but I've sent you the numbers, folks, that they texted me. We're back anywhere from a little over 50% in person at the high school to up close to 67 to 70% at some of our elementaries. But all schools did have several come back, and we can handle that and still socially distance, I think, and do well with that. So I'm very excited for us to see some more kids that we haven't seen in 7 or 8 months. next Monday, hopefully. So, and that finally, Ms. Rager, Chairman Rager, concludes my superintendent report.
All right, thank you. Just of note, also the personnel actions, we were given those, and it's also going to be put in our minutes. So we'll go down now to our attendance and enrollment report. Mr. Freeman. Is he on here?
He was having connectivity problems, and I don't know if he was able to make it or not. Last time.
Okay. I don't hear him.
He got problems anyways.
He did send us a picture with some numbers on it. We can try to decipher the numbers that he provided if you would like.
I think we've got the report in our binders.
I'm here.
Are you
I'm
there?
on.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, guys. Okay, hey, Mr. Chairman, board members, just real quickly, second month attendance report ended October the 13th. Obviously, our attendance percentages are not going to be figured based on the participation this year, but we do have the enrollment, and that's what I want to share with you. Second month, we're currently at 4,338 compared to last year at 4,466. That's down 120 for the month. The previous month, we're down 31. And again, I always like to remind you all this from last day of school last year, we're down 51. The enrollment as of today, 23rd, we're at 4,347. So gained 9 kids from the end of the second month. So have any questions?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go on down now to our board action items. Item A is to consider the BG1 for rear entrance awning at the Muhlenberg County High School West Campus. Mr. Buttsinger.
Thank you, Chairman Rager. This is for just to consider a BG1 for an awning at the rear entrance. It's only for it's under $10,000, which I argued with KDE significantly to try to eliminate the need for a BG. However, they say because it's dealing with an entrance that we have to have one. So we'd like to get an awning, much like at East Campus, how they have one at the rear of the building, just for when the kids do get to come back into classes, if for inclement weather, when they're doing temperature checks. So, are there any questions?
Are there any questions or discussion? If not, I would need a motion to approve. I have a motion by Mr. Bowers.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wells. All in favor of considering the BG1 for the rear entrance for West Campus, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? I hear none. We'll go down to item B to consider A1A contract between owner, which is the Muhlenberg County Board of Education, and Ronald Johnson and Associates, PSC for engineering services for the MCHS West and East Campus gym roof resurfacing. Mr. Buttsinger.
Thank you again. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, no kidding.
This is just another standardized thing that we have to do every time we have a project such as this. It's the architect contract that we have between the district and the architect. So that's the engineering services, and it's just for the gym roof resurfacing. We've already approved the BG1 for the roof resurfacing. It's the same contract we had to do for every other roof we've done. So it's pretty simple. And in fact, the engineers are the ones that will all sign off and tell us whether or not that it was done properly.
How much was this project?
I believe it was a little bit over 500,000.
Okay, yeah.
Any questions or discussion? If not, I'll need a motion to approve.
I make a motion.
Motion.
I think I heard Kim. A motion by Ms. Bard
Second.
and a second by Mr. Bowers. All in favor of considering the contract between the Board of Education and Ronald Johnson and Associates, and that would be for the MCHS West and East Campus gym roof resurfacing project, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. We're now down to our board consent agenda items, and this would be our minutes of the prior board meeting, leave of absence requests, declared outdated technology surplus, and also to consider accepting a donation to Central City Elementary Library from the Willadine Knopfsinger Estate. Everyone's had a chance to look at all of these in your binders. Is there any questions or discussion?
I don't.
If not, I need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
You don't need Susan.
who was that?
Me,
Susan.
Susan.
Okay, Susan. I have a motion by Ms. Wells
Second.
and a second by Mr. Johar. All in favor of approving the board consent agenda items, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none. And before we adjourn, I just want everybody in our district to know you're just amazing. We've all come together, made the best of an aggravating and inconvenient situation. As a school board, we can honestly say that we appreciate the commitment and the hard work that everyone's doing to make our school system flow. And we know your jobs have been made harder and more time consuming, but just know that we value you all. And I just want to say thank you and give everyone a shout out there. So, what'd you say?
I said, amen.
Yes, yes.
Totally agree.
We appreciate you all. We know how hard you're working. We know the extra time. I know we've talked to probably several of you out there in different positions, and just we know everything's taking longer to do, and just know that we see that and we recognize that, and we are appreciative, and you're doing an amazing job. So
Thank you.
So now at this time, I'll need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Bowers.
Salute too.
Second, is that a second, Mr. Johar?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I hear none, and we are adjourned.
See y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.